start the recording of our webinar. So, welcome everyone. My name is Aliya Kumikbaeva, and I lead the Global Secretariat of the World Alliance of Mobile Peoples and Pastoralists. I will be moderating our webinar today. And on behalf of all of WAMIP, we're very glad to have you with us today to bring visibility to the Indigenous pastoralists from around the world. With the 2026, the International Year of Rangelands and Pastoralists just around the corner, we hope to use this critical moment as a way to ramp up international action for Indigenous pastoralists. But before we get to all of the exciting program planned for today, let's cover some housekeeping rules. So we have two interpreters with us today for translation to French and Spanish and back to English. I invite you to please use the interpretation button at the bottom to choose your language. We also ask that all of you as our audience please remain on mute throughout the webinar. You can use the chat function to ask questions, leave comments, or send us your reactions with emojis. So with this covered, let's get started. We have a lot of speakers joining us today, and I will first hand over to Khalid Al-Khawalde, our General Secretary of WAMIP and co-founding member from the Wadi Dana territory settled by Alatata tribe in Jordan. Khalid is the Director General of Dana and Qadisiyya Local Community Cooperative. So, Khalid, I hand over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Aliya. I'm glad that we, after a long time of operation, now we have this happening. Thank you all. Do that and more. I don't fear your tyranny. I don't despair ever, for I guard one seed, a little live seed, and I shall safeguard and plant again. افعل ذلك وأكثر. This is in Arabic. لا أخشى محاولاتك، لا أيأس أبدا، لأني أحرس بذرة واحدة، بذرة صغيرة حية، وسأحفظها وأزرعها مرة أخرى. Thank you. We as pastoralists have difficulty coming together as we are dispersed, but for many years we have tried to be united in our movement from different parts of the world. We defend our land. Our role as guardians of biodiversity and healthy food systems and the future of our planet in this time of crisis and uncertainty. We want to share with you about us and, more importantly, to define our vision for this forthcoming event, the International Year of Rangelands and Pastoralists. Without further delay, let's start, and I wish you a good time here with WAMIP. For this, let us hear from our allied social movements, the peasant and the fisher folk, who stand together with us pastoralists. Welcome everyone to this event. I would like to start by thanking again all of you for attending, the speakers, our invited allies and supported, and also Aliya, Zaya, and Fernando, and everyone in the technical team of WAMIP who have worked so hard for this to happen. Before we start, let me take a moment to think together and elevate our voice in gratitude and respect for our ancestors, for our communities and tribes, the lands they care for, and the animals that sustain us. I especially Remember our brothers and sisters pastoralists in Palestine, living under siege and genocide, under settler colonialism, and nevertheless, resisting. As a Bedouin narrative, let me read this short poem to honor them. It is by Fawaz Turki, written in 1940. Burn our land, burn our dream, pour acid onto our songs, cover with sawdust the blood of our massacred people, muffle with your technology the screams of all that's free, wild, and indigenous. Destroy our grass and soil, raze to the ground every farm and every village our ancestors had built, every tree, every home, every book, every law, and all the equity and harmony denuded the forest and the earth till no insects, no bird, no word can find a place to hide. These words constitute the pillar for food sovereignty and for life. Thank you for being with us. Over to you, Kenyan Subramaniam from Levy Campesina, and Niaz Dori from the World Forum of Fisher Peoples. Thank you. The floor is yours.
Okay, it is now unmuted. Vanakkam and Namaskar from Tamil Nadu, India. So I'm Kannayan Subramaniam, General Secretary of South Indian Coordination Committee of the Farmers Movements. I'm also a former operative member of the International Planning Committee for Food Sovereignty. Today I stand before you as a voice for small farmers, pastoralists, and food producers who are the backbone of our food systems and guardians of our planet's biodiversity. This webinar is deeply significant. It is the moment to recognize the critical role of pastoralism in sustaining ecosystems, preserving cultures, and ensuring food sovereignty. Pastoralism is not just a livelihood, it is a way of life here in India, all over the world, that has coexisted with nature for millennia, embodying resilience, adaptability, and sustainability. Pastoralism is a living example of food sovereignty in action. Pastoralists manage vast rangelands, maintain biodiversity, and produce food in harmony with nature. Yet their way of life is under threat from land grabbing, climate change, and policies that prioritize industrial agriculture over traditional knowledge and practices. I would like to say something about the Nileni process and its relevance. You might all aware that Nileni process, born out of 2007 Nileni Forum for Food Sovereignty in Mali, has been the beacon of hope for movements like ours. It has provided a platform for farmers, pastoralists, fisherfolk, indigenous people, and food producers to unite and articulate a common mission for food sovereignty. The Nileni process reminds us that our struggles are interconnected and that solidarity is our great strength. As you are all aware that the third global forum of Nileni is set to take place in Sri Lanka in 2025, this year. This event is a crucial moment to showcase the presence of our diverse vibrant food sovereignty movements and to call for grassroots action towards systemic change. We urge all social movements, organizations, and global networks that share our demands for systemic transformation and stand for human rights to join us in an intersectional convergence. Together, we aim to build joint proposals that will drive radical and profound transformations, ultimately shaping a robust political agenda for the coming years. As we move towards IYRP 26, we must draw inspiration from the Nileni. We must amplify our voices of pastoralists and ensure their inclusion in the decision-making process. We must challenge the dominant narrative that marginalizes their contributions and instead celebrate their role as stewards of the land. I would like to explain you about the alternative trade framework La Via Campesina is emphasizing. The current global trade system is completely broken. It prioritizes profit over people, exploits small-scale producers, and undermines local food systems. Farmers and pastoralists are often forced to sell their produce, their animals, at prices below the cost of production, pushing them into debt and poverty. This is unacceptable. We need alternative trade frameworks that prioritizes fairness, equity, and sustainability. These frameworks must ensure that farmers and pastoralists receive a fair price for their produces, that local markets are protected, and the trade policies support rather than undermine food sovereignty. La Via Campesina has long advocated for such alternatives, including the concept of food sovereignty-based trade, which prioritizes local and regional markets over the global export-oriented systems. Public policies are needed for price support. Public policies play a crucial role in shaping the livelihood of the farmers, pastoralists, and food producers. In India, we have MSP. You might have seen the big protest in India. That is for the public policy to protect price mechanism. Unfortunately, many governments have abandoned their responsibility to support small-scale producers. Instead, they are favoring the corporate agribusiness. This must change. We demand public policies that provide price support for the farmers and pastoralists, ensuring that they can earn a dignified livelihood. This includes mechanisms like minimum support prices, subsidies for sustainable practices, and investments in infrastructure that benefit small-scale producers. Additionally, we need policies that recognize and protect the rights of pastoralists to access and manage rangelands, ensuring their continued contribution to food sovereignty and ecological balance. As we look ahead of IYRP 26, let us seize this opportunity to elevate the voices of pastoralists and advocate for their rights. Let us push for policies and trade frameworks that prioritize people and the planet over the profit. Let us strengthen our movements and build alliances across sectors and advance food sovereignty for all. In the words of Nileni Declaration, food sovereignty is our right and our future. Together, we can create a world where farmers, pastoralists, and food producers are respected, supported, and empowered to feed their communities and care for the earth. Nandri Vanakkam. Thank you very much. Long live peasants and pastoralists. Unity, food sovereignty now.
Thank you so much, Kanayan, for the kind words. I will now pass over to Niaz Dori.
Hello. Thank you for having me here on behalf of the World Forum of Fisher People, representing over 10 million fishing folk from around the globe. including the organization that I have the honor of serving, the North American Marine Alliance here in the United States. Thank you for inviting us to be a part of this important conversation. The fisher folk of the world stand in solidarity with you. There's a tribe here in North America that doesn't have a separate word for farmers, pastoralists, or fisher people. They have only one word, and it's called food providers. And I think that really speaks to the solidarity we all have with each other, because we have one single role, which is to provide food for our communities and for ourselves. And to be able to do that with dignity, with economic security, and with social peace is at the top of all of our collective agenda. This upcoming year of the year of Rangeland and Pastoralists will be an important time for all of us to stand with you, to raise our voices in support of your sovereignty and your ability to provide access to food to your communities and to yourselves, while having dignity, while having the fair prices that allow you to live the lives that you aspire for yourselves and your community, and to be able to feed those in your circles and in your community. This year should not be co-opted and will not be co-opted, because we are going to stand together to make sure that it doesn't get taken over by industry or academics, that it is really a space for community-based food providers like pastoralists and rangeland folks to be able to raise their voices and to be able to speak together in support of a food system that's driven by communities, by those who belong on the land, who belong on the water, not those who are belonging in boardrooms and really interested in their bottom lines of their shareholders. We're all collectively with you as you raise your voices, and we are honored to stand with you as you fight for this space. But it shouldn't always be a fight. We also need to celebrate the livelihoods that we all represent. I personally am not a fisher person. I serve fishing people. So when I talk about us and we, I'm really talking about the fisher people who lead our work and who I stand behind. And I am honored to serve in this work. This is a, we here in the US, we are often told that the US needs to stand up to feed the world, but we don't need to feed the world. No one needs to take that responsibility. What we need to do is give people in the world like yourselves your land back, your seeds back, your fishing rights back, so that you can do what you have done for millennia, which is to feed yourselves and to have agency and to have that sovereignty that you're seeking. That's what we want to collectively look for. Nobody should feel like they are either privileged to feed the world or required or responsible for feeding the world. We need to take the sovereignty back that gives us access to our land and our ways of lives and our livelihoods, so that we can feed ourselves with dignity. And we stand behind you in that work, and we look forward to being with you in this upcoming year and making sure that your voices are heard, and that you're not doing it alone, and that you're not traveling down this road alone, that you have tens of thousands and millions of people from the waters to the lands standing with you in solidarity. Thank you again for having me as a representative of the World Forum of Fisher People with you, and I send you greetings from here in the US. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Niaz. I will now pass over to Fernando Garcia Dori, who's the regional coordinator for WAMIP Europe and a representative of Campo Adentro Shepherd Schools in Europe. Fernando, over to you.
Thank you, Aliyah. And thank you very much, everyone attending, and also our allies from Via Campesina and the Fisher Folk peoples. Thank you so much. Very important words of support. Well, connecting from the late days of winter here in the mountains north of Spain, where we have our cooperative and cheese production initiative. And I wanted to tell you a little bit about WAMIP for those who are like maybe arriving to get to know about the movement. WAMIP is a movement of grassroots pastoralist organizations that starts to take form in the early 2000s. It's interestingly enough as a parallel meeting of pastoralists in the Durban Conference of National Parks. That tells a lot. When I arrived to WAMIP in 2007 and I learned from this history, Khalid was also there and Mamahu, I think. That tells that the pastoralists were being invited by the national parks authorities, that is, environmental authorities. And then they realized that they had a great role on those national parks. The many biodiversity areas are possible because of the activities and role of pastoralists. So slowly, as an agent that takes self-awareness, we started to grow up in a movement. We are talking about 500 million people. Next slide, please. 100 million people, sorry, 250 to 500 million people around the world that rely on pastoralist systems according to FAO. And these pastoralist areas are also would be considered global grasslands. We can see in this slide that cover, for example, Arctic areas, desert shrubs, and grasslands. Very often mountain areas also. All those so-called marginal lands that in fact are not marginal, are at the center of the livelihoods of all these communities that have evolved together with these highly rich ecosystems to sustain, as I said, millennia-long communities, tribes, and peoples, indigenous peoples all around the world. So for us, the grasslands are the support structure that sustain the animals that we graze and then the communities. Next slide. Therefore, it's also important to think that for us in WAMIP, the important thing is to make sure that there are the conditions for a global voice of pastoralists to be present to accompany the work we are doing at local level. In this effort to take the global stage, we have been working with our allies Via Campesina and the Fisher Folk for the United Declaration on Peasant Rights in 2018. That was a long process. And now we have this declaration that many countries have signed as a sort of support structure for our demands. Also, the indigenous peoples legal frames. Not all pastoralists are indigenous, but there are some that are, and therefore we support also our brothers and sisters, indigenous people that are also based in mobility for their forms of life. Mobility and territory, it's the base for raising the livestock. That's what's a crucial element we share. Then food sovereignty has been redefined for pastoralists and also defining together with allies like the LIFE network and LPPS, the Livestock Keepers' Rights. And also, for example, we have been influencing spaces like the UN Convention to Combat Desertification. I remember in 2007, we went there in Madrid and we managed to change the text. By then, they said that goats and flocks could provoke erosion in soil and then, therefore, push for the certification. And on the contrary, we showed with scientific evidences and the allied academics and scientists that, in fact, mobile pastoralism guarantees soil fertility because it's avoiding the pressure on a certain piece of ground. And we are very aware of the problem of overgrazing and preserving the ecosystems that sustain us. So now we're looking to the International Year of Rangeland and Pastoralists, and it's the moment to make sure also we bring the voice there. In terms of the UN Convention on Climate Change, we have been taking action in Glasgow and other spaces to, and with allied academics like Pastres, to make sure that the general public don't buy the hasty discourse by which all animal product is evil and that a cow pollutes as much as a car. That needs a more nuanced debate because it depends very much in the model of production. An industrial farm or animal husbandry that we oppose will be for sure be polluting, will be draining water resources, and will be being sustained in industrial agriculture in other parts of the world, having like vegetal protein, feed sources, and so on. On the contrary, we work with what is available to us with adaptable strategies. So therefore, we say sheep and our flocks are for climate. Let's move to the next slide, please. Now we are approaching, as I said, the International Year of Rangeland Pastoralists, and we have been working on this together with different allies. No? There is a tremendous support for the IYRP that is being called from a wide range of organizations and states. We at the same time emphasize the importance of considering certain aspects from now until 2026 and beyond, based on which we, as WAMIP, will be able to fully invest and dedicate ourselves to the IYRP and its best implementation. Because at the end, what is important to understand is that in this first ever International Year of Pastoralists, there is a clear space and voice for pastoralists, not merely as participants or stakeholders, but as our Sami brothers from the Arctic said, we are right holders, which includes a clear role in co-management of the process and the initiative. We see, for example, in this graphic that the multi-stakeholder support for IYRP has a main presence of national NGOs and national governments and research scientific institutes. How we manage to make sure that pastoralist organizations at the center of this process take a greater engagement, how to walk at that rhythm and not leave anyone behind. Regarding the governance of IYRP, we have to consider existing pastoralist networks and allow them to define their representatives amongst themselves. We have to recognize the centrality of pastoralists in this process. These matters have to be taken into account for the future governance of IYRP, and this includes the organization and management of trust funds and funding mechanisms. These demands are in our mind also clearly underlined in the principles of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, where again, no one should be left behind. I also would like to stress other debates we had. For us, it's very important to have an open definition of what is considered a rangeland to be included in all documents and statements. It's not only grasslands, but it's also forests, tundra, mountains, and forest pastures, as well as for post-harvest cropland. In fact, what we see is that it's very important to move from a discourse that is biocentric, based on the grassland ecology, to move towards a more social ecology approach, or human ecology, in which pastoralists are at the center of the debate. We also need to move beyond discursive celebration and instead mobilize resources and governments to implement actions on the field. We need also to talk about the definition of rangelands and including then connectivity, animal trails, migration routes, seasonal pasture access, and effective mobility rights and recognition of pastoralist territories of life. For example, what is called the Indigenous and Community Conservated Areas and Territories, or ICCAs, and their customary governance systems are essential to ensure the sustainable rangeland use. There cannot be a sustainable rangeland use without empowering the grassroots pastoralist organizations. And just to end, I think that it's important to raise a critical awareness in all the actors involved, both the civil society, IYRP, the FAO, United Nations governments, a critical awareness to avoid the co-optation by the industrial livestock lobbies and other lobbies of this important event to put pastoralists at the center. Thank you so much, and we will be hearing more on this from the different participants.
Thank you so much, Fernando, for this introduction to WAMIP and also the International Year, the IYRP. So next we will have a video address from one of our co-founding members of WAMIP and the regional coordinator for Eastern and Central Asia. Her name is Mamanhu Sodnom. Mamanhu is an indigenous pastoralist leader from the Gobi Desert in Mongolia. So let's hear her message to us.
За нүүдэлчин удамтай Төв Азийн та бүгдийг энэ өдрийн сайхан амгалан айлтгая. Би Монгол улсын малчин WAMIP-ийн одоо Төв Азийн удирдах зүйлийн төлөөлөгч WAMIP гэдэг хүн байна. Би Өмнөг аймгийн Далун цодгоодын хаан гор суманд амьдардаг насаараа мал малсан 60 жил мал малсан. Мал малсан ажгаар сүүцгаар нэгтгэрэн жижиг үйлдвэрлэлийн хийдэг ийм хүн байна. За малчтад би тулгамдсан асуудлыг талаар товчхон дурдъя. Одоо манай тэр удамдан говьд ер нь бол бэлчээртэр уул уурхайн компаниуд үйл ажиллагаа нэлээд явуулдаг. Бэлчээрийн газрыг одоо шахан зайлуулдаг. Нүүдэл зайлуулдаг. Энэ бас бидний том эмзэг асуудал байдаг юм аа. Нүүдэлчид бидний бүтээгдэхүүний үнэлэмжийг сайжруулах шаардлагатай байдаг аа. За олон улсын нүүдэлч малчны жил бэлчээрийн тухай Монгол улсын олон улсын нүүдэлч малчны жилийг бэлчээрийг идэвхтэй дамжиж байгаад би туйлын баяртай байдаг аа. Монгол улсын засгийн газар маань одоо энэ бэлчээрийн жилийг маш хүчтэй дэмжиж бэлчээрийн жил болгон зарласан юм аа. Засгийн газартай хамтран ажилладаг бөгөөд түүний хүрээнд жишээлбэл засгийн газрын дэмжлэгтэйгээр зохион байгуулагдсан уулзалт жуулгонууд гэх мэт мөн WAMIP-ийн одоо хурлуудын зохион байгуулсан бэлчээр мал аж ахуйн хурлуудад идэвхтэй оролцоор ирсэн байдаг юм аа. Бид бэлчээрийн алсын харааг нэгтгэмжлэсний байгууллагын хүнс удаа аж ахуйн байгууллага Таваа болон ойрын түншүүдийн хамтаар хөгжүүлж ажиллахыг зорж байна. Энэ үйл явцад төвөд нүүдэлчин малчдын өөрсдөө байх бөгөөд нүүдэлчин малчин өөрсдөө энэ хүү санаачлагыг гартаан авах ёстой гэж боддог. Үндэсний түвшинд боддог. Ажиллагаа малчдын уламжилт амьдралын хэв маягийг хадгалж нүүдэлчдийнхээ өвөл соёлыг удаан дамжуулан үлдээх ёстой гэж боддог би.
So with that, let's travel to another part of the world and hear from our leaders in the Eastern and Southern Africa. I welcome Benjamin Mutambuka, WAMIP Regional Coordinator and a Finance and Development Professional from a pastoralist family in Southwest Uganda. Benjamin has worked for over 25 years in the pastoralist and Indigenous peoples sector at national and international level. Currently, he is the coordinator of the Eastern and Southern Africa Pastoralist Network and sits on the coordination committee of the Civil Society and Indigenous Peoples Mechanism. So Benjamin, over to you.
Good evening, everyone. Oh, sorry, I thought in this part of the world it's good evening, but how is everyone in the different time zones? As I've already been introduced, it's my pleasure to bring you greetings from the community of pastoralists in Eastern and Southern Africa. I'm going to talk about pastoralist land rights and access to resources, which is the core of pastoralism in the whole world. So pastoralism, next slide, please. Next, pastoralism is centered on three basic pillars. You have previously seen the person, then land, which we are now on this slide, then the next slide. Next slide, please. Livestock. So the three, human beings, livestock, and natural resources, offer a self-sustaining symbiotic ecosystem in the pastoralist endeavors. The land or the natural resources feed both livestock and the people.
Benjamin, I think there is a problem with the connection. Maybe let's see if Benjamin's connection improves. Otherwise, let's see. Well, it looks like Benjamin's connection is faulty, so we'll see whether he can reconnect with a better connection. And in that case, maybe I'll jump straight to our next speaker, Monica Yatur, also from the Eastern and Southern Africa. Monica, let me just skip over to your part of the slides and show you for everyone. Firstly, to introduce Monica, Monica is a pastoralist from Baringo, Kenya, and the founder of Indigenous Women and Girls Initiative, and the co-chair of Agroecology Coalition, and member of the Eastern and Southern Africa Pastoralist Network that we previously heard Benjamin as well introduce. So Monica advocates for livelihoods diversification in support of agroecology, transitioning among the Indigenous pastoralist communities. So Monica, let me hand over to you.
Thank you, and good morning and good afternoon all over the world. My name is Monica. I'm a proud pastoralist, and maybe we can go straight to my slides, and I'll be off the video because of my internet. Please, okay. So as Benjamin spoke today, he talked about land. Land is the most resource in pastoralist community. And if you see this guy, he has walked all the way to look for a water pan. And that's why you see resources is a problem. Land, water is our problem. Next slide. This is a sociocultural barriers in our community. This is a group in Northern Kenya. This is a baraza of men talking about natural resource. If you can see clearly, there is no woman representative here. So as I speak about women empowerment and in pastoralist community, there is a big barrier. You can't see women in any sociocultural in a meeting like this. Go to the next slide. In every community, women are the power of everything. For you to feed your family, women are the first one to do that. And in most of these communities, small ruminants like goats, sheep belongs to women in some community, but in most cases it belongs to men. So we have environmental challenges such as climate change. As we speak now, we have heavy rains in most part of the East Africa. We have seen flash floods, and we are waiting for other heavy rains in the month of June. So we don't know. We need to talk about how do we speak about climate action? How do we reduce the flash flood that is killing our degraded land? Next slide. Political and policy factors. Indigenous pastoralist communities are often marginalized from national development plans. Lack of representation in government and other decision-making bodies further exacerbates the inclusion. Inadequate infrastructure. Recently, I had agroecology training in a place called Kamar location. Surely the place is not connected to the world. We don't have internet. We don't have even infrastructure. You struggle to reach out to people. You use motorbike for 50 to 100 kilometers to reach out to community. So we need to talk to the policymakers. How do we open up these pastoralist areas? Also speaking about internet connection, if I'm working with farmer groups, if I happen to mobilize, even using the area chief, it takes you longer, 2 weeks or 3 weeks to even reach out to our area chiefs for mobilization. Next slide, please. Key policy frameworks and focus that as advocates for pastoralists should focus on. Policy frameworks on pastoralism in Africa, the crucial intercontinental level policy developed by African Union. We need to look at that. We have also regional economic committees, RECs, by organizations like the AU and IGAD and EAC Commission. How do we approach them to support us in amplifying the voices of pastoralists in East Africa and also in Africa? Key policy focus that is needed now, especially in areas like Somalia, Ethiopia, and also in other parts of Tanzania. We don't have land use and land resource rights. As you see in Tanzania currently, we have communities who have been evicted by its government. So how do we protect the rights of pastoralists in East Africa? Drought resilience and climate change adaptation. As we speak, we have climate change action plans. We have at the moment national agroecology plan, but nobody is speaking about that, even at our community level. No one is speaking about these policies that we have, even at our own desk. So social services and education, we have areas that are marginalized, where education is far-fetched. Children of pastoralists walk up to 100 kilometers for schools. We have even schools that have been closed because child labor. Our children are used to take care of livestock. How do we speak about SDG 1 and also SDG 2 and SDG 4 that's affecting the pastoralist community? Social services is missing. Conflict resolution and peace building. We have communities who are now in IDPs. They are living the IDPs in their own country. The like of women in Elgeyo Marakwet who are widows because of banditry. How do we speak about that? We have people in my own county who are IDPs. How do we ensure that their livelihoods are restored and also taken back to their community? So those are challenges that we have. And as you speak about the National Year of Rangelands and Pastoralism 2026, let's come clean and support pastoralism. Let our government protect pastoralism as a way of life. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Monica. Let me check whether we have Benjamin back with us. Benjamin, can you hear us and can you unmute yourself?
Do you hear me?
Yes.
So can I go on?
Yes, please do. And maybe I would ask you to remove your camera. That way we can try to keep your connection.
Okay. Okay.
So we were here. Over to you.
Sorry about the mishap. So I was saying that when talking about the pastoralist land rights and access to land resources, it is important to realize that land or natural resources is one of the basic pillars of the self-sustaining ecosystem that we have in pastoralist areas. So can we move back to the next slide, please? Yeah, so when you look at this picture, it brings out clearly the fact that the pastoralist lands have been violated by very many people, including authorities. Now, if you look at these stones here, this is a land that was previously used for pastoralism, but it has been taken over for marble mining in the northeastern part of Uganda. Next slide, please. Now, this particular picture is taken from the Rift Valley of Kenya in a place called Olkaria. This is a thermal plant for making electricity. Now, the whole of that place, geothermal plant, the whole of that place, a very big area, was once a pastoralist area, but has been taken over by government for making electricity. And unfortunately, none of the community people around there uses this electricity. It is all generated and taken to Nairobi and the other urban areas. So pastoralists are not having their access to their land. And other than minerals and this power generation, we also have things like the new things now, like carbon trading. Good land is being taken over and people are made to plant trees. Yes, planting trees is good, but the person who's telling you to plant trees back home is emitting carbon and producing, but for you, you cannot even produce food. Instead, you are planting trees and in a way chasing people from grazing there. Then we have got large industrial projects like railways and roads. All these come and affect the pastoralist way of access to and control over land. Next slide, please. Okay, continue, because I think I've talked about this. Continue. Yeah, so, okay, even this one I've just finished. So, how are pastoralists affected? I I've just learned today that actually in the whole of Africa, 70% of rural African forest is owned communally. In other words, when you have land that is owned communally, it makes it possible for people to move around and share resources according to availability. But now, what is happening now is there is a lot of individualization of ownership of land, including the land in the pastoralist areas. That means that it is now very difficult in some parts of the world for livestock to move from one part of the world to another, especially when there is a drought or there is insecurity. Actually, this week, we have seen in Uganda, some pastoralists who came from Chad and Cameroon, they tried to enter Uganda, but they were forced to go back to South Sudan. So as long as we continue individualizing the land, then it becomes impossible for people to follow the traditional ways of resource sharing, and that can lead into problems. Of course, we're also seeing that there is a lot of land grabbing by government, investors, miners, and so on, which brings insecurity of tenure on the part of pastoralists. Next slide, please. So, as a result of this disequilibrium in land ownership, we are seeing increasing cases of inter and intra-community conflicts as resources dwindle, and yet we have inequitable sharing. And it becomes very difficult, and you end up with a lot of possibilities of inter-community conflicts. Then, naturally, we end up having loss of livestock in certain communities. And the moment a community loses livestock, then you have cases of cattle rustling as people try to restock. So they are likely to invade the neighboring communities in order to get land from livestock from there, and that's a problem. Next slide, please. So, what are some of the possible solutions? Of course, there are many, but in a given time, these are some of the few things that we can have. For instance, we are saying that pastoralist communities should be helped to acquire land titles, and most especially or preferably on a communal basis, so that the land belongs, for instance, a clan or a community. Then we are also proposing that we should explore ways and means of securing land tenure, because many of the communities or pastoralists, they don't have any document to show that they are the owners of land. Then we also should call upon the governments to respect policies, laws, and other continental or global arrangements. For instance, the VGGTs, which under the FAO. Then in Africa, we have the AU pastoralism policy framework. Governments have come to make to say that they support those things, but in real life, you don't see them putting them into practice. Then we're also calling upon the different governments to compensate communities for any land that may have been taken away without free, prior, and informed consent, because pastoralists have lost a lot of land and nobody bothers about them. Then we're also saying that to be born a pastoralist is not a prison. We should help young pastoralist youth to acquire skills and knowledge so that they can participate effectively in alternative and complementary livelihoods. In other words, they should be given opportunities like every other person to benefit from what is around them. Next slide, please. So as I conclude, is as we are going towards the International Year of Rangelands and Pastoralism, I call upon the governments to not only to support in terms of talking, but ensure that all the good things that we expect from the Year of Rangelands and Pastoralism are actually put into practice wherever we are. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Benjamin, for your presentation, and Monica too. And as we heard from both of them, There are many fundamental challenges that we need to address to ensure a better and fair life for Indigenous pastoralist communities, but we do have the solutions which needs to be brought to scale. And one successful example is from South Asia, and our next speaker, Megha Sheth, is a dedicated practitioner and advocate for marginalized communities and focusing on women and indigenous groups. And she has worked extensively on land rights, sustainable farming, and environmental justice, with a special emphasis on empowering pastoralist and indigenous rural women. Megha will share with us our next story on pastoralist women's leadership in India. So Megha, over to you.
Thank you, Alia, and very good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. So I'm based in western part of India right now, and I'll give you a tour to the place where women are empowered enough and they have secured that common pastoral land rights, and they are governing it very well. So thank you. Next slide. So as every speakers are saying that pastoralism is not just a occupation, but it's a way of life. So here, when we talk about way of life, it's not only about issues they are grappling with, but they are providing solutions to it. And I think pastoralism, the way of life, gives and lives the answer of all the crises that are happening in the country and at the globally at this moment. If we talk about food crisis, if we talk about job crisis, if we talk about energy crisis, if we talk about climate crisis, if we talk about peace crisis, I think pastoralism is the way of life that is giving solution to each of the crises. And here, with this particular practice, where women are in leading role, women are in decision-making role, now proving an example of how stewardship is happening at the grassroots level. Next slide. So major, as everyone mentioned, major problem statements are around that pasture lands are shrinking. There are limited grazing area for livestock. Also, the grazing area which is available are degraded by climate crisis. And this is leading towards the distress migration, not the traditional one, but distress migration, forceful migration for the pastoralists in the modern context. So against that, in the field area, next slide, in the field area of Kutch region, which is in the western part of Gujarat, so westernmost part of India, where there is around 7,000 hectares of pasture land. And out of that, we worked in 10 villages as a pilot level, and where 2,080 acres of pasture land was there. The average rainfall is very desert because it's an arid and semi-arid region. But majority of the community lies there are pastoral in nature, and traditionally they are animal herders. There is no such governance mechanism at the ground level for a common land pastoral land management, and especially when women's role is very much invisible and not in decision making. Through the practice or MARAG or Pastoral Women Alliance's intervention, next slide, what we did is we piloted this project, a previous one, in 10 villages where we identify 110 pastoralist women and make the Women Pastoral Land Management Committee. We train them around the grazing land mapping, their leadership role, pastoral land development plan, and sustainable restoration practices like silvopasture model. So in a technical way or in a holistic way on a leadership and decision-making role, experts train them, the whole Women Pastoral Land Management Committee. And under their leadership, under their vision, under their traditional practices, they filed the resolution at a panchayat level, and within the 10 villages, they got title, the formal recognition on the land, on the pasture land they are working. Also, they did all the practices to restore the pasture land. They did land cleaning, they did land leveling. They also showed the native grasses at the pasture land. Also, in the mapping and other activities, the technical expertise and support were provided to them. So at the end, women under their own leadership, especially pastoralist women under their own leadership, they have developed a pasture land management plan on their traditional knowledge that on the open grazing area, on rotational grazing planning, how much livestock should graze in particular time. So all these with their traditional knowledge, with their practical knowledge, they developed a pasture land management plan at the village level. Next slides. So this is the photographs that show the whole process. The land was look like it before the intervention took place. Next slide. After the intervention, women did the land cleaning and land leveling and all the activities. Next slide. They also sowed the native grasses, which is also climate resilient in the particular region, arid and semi-arid region. This is the initial phase. Next slide, please. And this is the final stage. So this is how the barren village pasture was turned into a thriving pastures. And this impacted, next slide, please. Almost 100 plus acres of pasture land is regenerated and restored under the leadership of pastoralist women, their knowledge. Also, 1,020 families within the village are benefited through it. Their ecological sustainability, their economical sustainability was secured. So also the advancement in formal and governance rights of women in land securing. So this is the story of hope. This is the story we need to scalable because this is the sustainable practice. And I think IYRP is one of the opportunity or one of the initial year where we should focus on scaling up such initiative in different part of global. Next slide. With this note, I think in solidarity, we all are together to work with them. Jai Maldhari, live long pastoralist. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation, Megha, and it's wonderful to see such a great example and a success story. So sticking with the topic of land governance, let's move to the continent of Latin America, where we'll hear from Marita Alvarez and Pablo Freire, members of pastoralist organization in South America in the north of Argentina. Marita and Pablo are also the regional coordinators for WAMIP Latin America. So first, we have a video from Marita.
Yo soy de la organización Pastor Américas. Nosotros nos organizamos primero en asociaciones de base, después hacemos parte de la red de nuestra región que es Redes Chaco y mediante ellos hacemos parte de Pastor América. Pastor América es una organización que surge de pequeños productores del sector de ganadería pastoralista, tanto de vacas, cabras, llamas, ovejas, bueno, los camélidos de la zona andina. Nosotros ahora estamos en la región del Gran Chaco y desde aquí les hago este videíto para que conozcan un poco cómo es nuestro monte, el lugar donde nosotros traemos los animales cuando el humedal se inunda, ¿no? Hacemos una transhumancia más o menos de 40 kilómetros Nuestra organización surge principalmente para poder defender nuestra soberanía alimentaria, nuestra autodeterminación como productores y sobre todo por la lucha por el territorio, ¿no? Porque una de las principales amenazas es el continuo avance de la frontera agrícola con los otros sistemas que van ocupando terrenos que son nuestras áreas de pastoreo. Una de las formas que hemos tenido para mitigar esas amenazas, entre ellas el cambio climático también, es la construcción de organización y poder ser parte de un sistema de alerta Pilcomayo, se llama, que es un sistema que a nosotros nos mantiene informados, productores de la zona de Bolivia, Paraguay, Chaco argentino, nos mantenemos informados del avance del agua. Este sistema de alerta Pilcomayo está conformado por organizaciones, entes gubernamentales y pequeños productores. Bueno, entre otras cosas, también hemos logrado mantener canales de diálogos con los gobiernos de turno para ir construyendo respuestas a la problemática del cambio climático y buscando también la posibilidad de que generen políticas públicas que nos protejan del avance de la frontera agrícola, de esa frontera agrícola que viene con la intensificación de la producción, ¿no? Y que arrasa con todo el monte, que provoca desmonte, provoca quemazones, provoca inundaciones, provoca, bueno, un montón de problemas que después los sufrimos nosotros en territorio. Además de ser una amenaza, también otra de las principales problemáticas que se nos presenta es los jóvenes que bueno, estas amenazas también le van robando oportunidades a los jóvenes y bueno, la idea de mantenernos organizados y participar de diferentes espacios es para que ellos tengan más herramientas de lucha y espacios de lucha donde poder llevar las voces y lograr incidir en la toma de decisiones de los gobiernos. Creo que el foco de la lucha siempre es la defensa de la soberanía alimentaria, el territorio y el acceso y el ejercicio de los derechos. Hay una sequía interesante, importante, que también nos tiene todo el tiempo ocupados para sostener nuestro sistema. Bueno, ¿qué esperamos del año 2026 de pastos y pastores? Y lo principal es poder acceder a herramientas que nos permitan tener más tecnología en el campo, ¿no? Y fortalecer nuestras organizaciones de base y nuestras organizaciones regionales principalmente. Y sobre todo, poder tener acceso a los espacios internacionales de diálogo y formarnos para tener la voz presente en esos espacios donde la lucha es colectiva y la lucha se potencia con otros sectores, ¿no? Nosotros aquí esperamos del año 2026 poder contar, como les dije antes, con acceso a políticas públicas que nos den la posibilidad de tener herramientas para generar espacios de capacitación, de formación, de acceso a herramientas físicas, ¿no? Herramientas que nos permitan hacer esta gestión del territorio que ahora lo hacemos a pulmón y que los procesos son mucho más largos.
Bueno, muchas gracias.
Thank you very
Sí,
much.
no, bueno, para complementar un
Well,
poco
to complement a
lo
bit
que Marité
what
nos estaba
Marite
contando desde el
has shared,
territorio, quería un poco pasar en
I
limpio,
wanted to
sobre todo hacer un foco no
bring our
en el
attention
tiempo
to
que nos está agotando, algunas
bring our
ideas
attention to
que
also
estamos
time. I
pensando
want to be
para el año
brief.
internacional de
Talking
pastizales
about
y pastoralistas.
the development of
No
pastoralists.
quiero dejar pasar un minuto
I
sin
don't want
decir
to,
que sería bueno
I don't want to
honrar la memoria
ignore that I want to honor the memory
de
of
una líder de la familia pastoralista de la India,
the
el
pastoralist
Raija, que
family
falleció hace poquito, así que
in India that
entonces,
unfortunately had
volviendo
passed
a
away.
un poco lo que
But now I want to be able
planteaba
to
Marilu,
comment on what Marite had said.
queremos
We have
resaltar la
to
importancia de la
we have
organización,
to
la
stress the
importancia
importance
de participar en
of
estos espacios
participating
globales,
in these
por la
global
cual
spaces,
nuestras
which
organizaciones, las
our
alianzas de pastores
organizations,
con
our
otras
alliances,
organizaciones, nos permiten
they allow for us
plantear los problemas. Que,
to
como hemos estado viendo en
contend with
todas las
certain problems, as we've
presentaciones,
seen in all of the
los problemas se
presentations,
repiten de
that
manera muy
a lot of the
similar
problems are
en todas las
repeated.
regiones del mundo.
You
Entonces,
know, we see this
participar
internationally.
en espacios
And
como el
so
mecanismo de la
to
sociedad civil, el
participate
PAO,
in
en
civil
el centro
society,
de saber el pastoralismo,
in the center of
que
knowing,
podemos
you know,
generar información y
pastoralism and
debates,
having
en
more
Nedeni,
debates,
en el foro
information,
campesino de FIDA,
and in
en la
the
agenda global de producción
Peasant Farmer
animal,
Forum, it said,
en el LIP, estar
and
actuando como
they're
muchas y
acting
muchos de nosotros lo estamos haciendo
as
ahora
many
en
of us are
este año
doing. In
internacional
this
de
year,
los
this international
camélidos,
year,
y por lo tanto para el año
we
que
want to be
viene,
able
en este año
to, you know, in the
internacional de
year
los
that's upcoming,
pastizales y los pastoralistas,
working with the
queremos
pastoralists,
especialmente
we
que
have
haya una
specifically
visibilización
of the
del pastoralismo en la
visibilization of
región y que
pastoralism in the
eso
region,
se
and that
traduzca en
is
normativas,
translated
en programas
into
que
programs
apoyen y
that
fortalezcan
support
las organizaciones de nuestras familias
the organizations
felizmente.
that are families, for
Que se
example, are a part
valore
of.
la
And
contribución
we want to
hacia la
value
soberanía alimentaria de
the
los sistemas
contribution of
pastoralistas
food
y por lo
sovereignty,
tanto trabajar para
not just,
defenderlos y no
you know,
para
working to defend
destruirlos
it,
o anularlos
but
como pareciera que muestran.
also we want
Reconocer,
to
por
make sure that we
supuesto,
combat, you
que
know,
los
the
alimentos que
nullification of
se
these efforts.
producen y elaboran son
And
de
we want to
altísima calidad.
also
Para
ensure
eso
that the
hay
quality
que
of the food that we
reconocer los temas
produce
de la
is of the
problemática
highest
del
quality,
acceso al agua
and we
y
want
a
to make
las
sure that people have
varias
access
cosas
to
se han
water,
mencionado hoy aquí.
and
Volver a
also
insistir en
to
que
the
tenemos
various
que
rights that
fortalecer
have
las
been mentioned
organizaciones de pastores
previously.
y reconocer la
And we want to be able
contribución
to
que
recognize
hacemos a las economías
the
locales y
work that we
nacionales.
do in our local
La
economies.
siguiente.
Next slide, please.
También
We
pensamos que es
also want to think,
necesario
we
trabajar
believe
en
that it
la
is
gestión del
necessary to
conocimiento
work
sobre
on
nuestras
the
realidades pastoralistas.
production of knowledge,
Rescatar, por supuesto,
rescuing
todo el conocimiento
all of
ancestral,
the
pero
knowledge, our
también
ancestral
generar
knowledge, and also
conocimiento con base científica que
generate new
mejore
knowledge
todos
that
los
was scientifically
argumentos que
based,
necesitamos
and we
usar
can have all of the
para
arguments
demostrar
possible to
el valor y
demonstrate
todos
the
esos
value
aportes que decíamos
and the
anteriormente.
support that we
También
have
en el
mentioned
caso
previously.
nuestro, en
Also,
Pastoramérica,
in our
estamos
case, in
soñando
Latin
con la
America,
posibilidad de tener
we're
algún
dreaming
apoyo
with the
para
possibility
ir
of
en
having
Latinoamérica,
the support.
hacer distintos estudios de casos de todos los
We have
países
to look at the
para
different case studies in
mostrar
Latin America
esta forma tan integral y
in
diversa
order
que
to have an
tenemos
integral
en
and
el
diverse
pastoralismo, tanto desde el punto de vista productivo,
or diverse
de la
experience
riqueza,
represented
como
in our
también
productive capacities,
ambiental y sociocultural.
in our environments, in
Bueno,
our climates, and
eso
otherwise.
para no quitarle
And
demasiado
I say
tiempo
that not to take too much
y
time
fortalecer
and to
nuestros
be able to
planes nacionales
strengthen
del año que viene, donde esperamos todas y todos
our
estar
movements
trabajando
internationally. All of us are working
para que sea un cambio, que haya un cambio
to
en todo lo que estamos
participate and
palpando.
create a new change.
Muchas gracias y
Thank you
gracias por
very
su
much,
atención.
and I appreciate your attention.
Well, huge thanks to all of our speakers for presenting their challenges, but also successes and solutions from across the globe. So next we have a panel discussion, and we now welcome additional speakers to join us. We have Reem Zorken, a youth mobilizer, pastoralist, and farmer from Jordan, and the lead of WAMIP Youth Group. We also have Fagouri Said, president of Pasto Arab, the Arab Pastoralist Network from Morocco, and also the regional coordinator of WAMIP North Africa. And we also have Ahmad Biravand, a member of the nomadic community of Iran and the representative of the Senesta organization. So let me invite all of our speakers to join our panel and turn on their video and unmute themselves. So, well, Reem, do we have you?
Hello, yes.
Hello.
Good morning, everyone. I think can you see me?
No, unfortunately, we cannot. But it's not a problem. That's okay. We all have technical issues sometimes. But I do want to first ask you a question. And before that, I forgot to mention that please, our dear audience, if you have any questions for any of these speakers that I mentioned that presented or that are now joining us, please post them in the chat and we'll try to address some of them. So, Reem, back to you. I wanted to first ask you, as a representative of pastoralist youth, to share your perspective on what are the biggest challenges that you face as a young pastoralist, and what could be done to better support young pastoralists.
Yes, thank you, Aliyah. Can you hear me, everyone?
Yes.
Good morning. I'm Reem. I'm from Indigenous tribe in southern Jordan, and I'm a volunteer in Dana and Qadisiyah local community cooperative. I'm facilitator of the WAMIP youth section, where we gather young pastoralists from Morocco, Mongolia, or Kenya, and we have been at the Young Pastoralist Conference in Mira, India, and take part at the IPC youth group. So, as young pastoralists, we face different challenges. One of them is coming from the crucial perception of our form of life and stereotypes. Like, people see pastoralism as something for those who do not have a choice or don't have an option, while success is now measured by office jobs, business suits. But in reality, we are the custodians of the land, providing the very basics of life, food and other animal product for sustenance of our communities and local market. This perception doesn't just create social pressure. It actively pushes young people away from pastoralism. It makes families question whether this way of life has a future. It discourages even investors from supporting young pastoralists, even in society. A pastoralist work is often undervalued. This issue is leading of loss of continuity in pastoralism livelihood, as young people also are moving, sometimes encouraged by our elders from villages to cities, where under the promises of more incomes, they can end up displaced and precarity. But I don't think we are powerless. We are not powerless. We, as young pastoralists, have to create a space for ourselves with our distinctive views and ideas for the future. The elders will soon leave us with the responsibility and the potential for a good next step. We can fight for policies that protect our land and promote sustainable grazing. Also, to have serving that makes possible to stay in the land. We can demand education that doesn't just teach us theories, but equips us with useful practical to manage our livestock and make a profit. Technology can be in our side too. Imagine using like mobile apps to predict the weather, to find water sources, or even to connect with buyers directly. And most important, we have each other. By coming together, forming cooperative, innovating, and pushing for the market and rethinking production system, we can turn the tide. We would like to have FAO and the IYRP on our side to support our plan to have a young pastoralist global gathering in 2026 and sustain our empowerment process in other ways. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Reem. And it's really great to hear your perspective as youth, because it's a common challenge all across the world. And and we really need to facilitate more opportunities for young pastoralists that are in line with the modern time. And I would like to next direct a question to Faguri. Faguri, hello. Yes, we haven't yet heard from the North African perspective, so I wanted to also get your perspective on what are the challenges that we've heard today also common in North Africa, and what could you recommend to our audience as actions?
Bon, je vais parler en français, vous m'écoutez?
Yes, so for all the English speakers, you should switch to the English interpretation in the booth.
Oui, d'accord. Alors, le pastoralisme au Maroc et dans
pastoralism in Morocco and all Africa
comparable que toutes les zones du monde
and also all around the world is with each of them a particularity is deeply rooted in tradition. It relies on extensive knowledge of the environment, animal husbandry, and natural cycle. This ancestral way of life represents a valuable and tangible heritage passed down through generations. Beyond its cultural significance,
je tiens bien à ce qui est, je relie le pastoralisme aux races animales parce qu'ils sont très liés.
Play a crucial role in preserving local animal breeds,
faire de l'élevage. À mon tour, les pastoralistes sont des éleveurs.
which are uniquely adapted to their environment and form an essential part of the genetic and cultural heritage of many regions.
Dans le domaine du
So
pastoralisme.
now,
Nous avons une enquête qui a été faite au Maroc où il y a 63% de
pastoralism is facing a decline. Younger generations are increasingly turning away from this way of life due to several factors.
Après 2014, ça continue. La régression du nombre de nomades il régresse. Et c'est parce que ces nomades, ils ont beaucoup de difficultés.
Pastoralist people, especially young,
Des facteurs
is reducing
qu'on peut citer.
year by year.
D'abord, il y a une
So the reason
la rentabilité de l'élevage est beaucoup plus dans les élevages
especially
sédentaires que dans le pastoralisme.
sedentary livestock farming, offering more stable income
Le revenu des pastoralistes
and less demanding working conditions, making it more attractive alternative, especially for the younger generation.
Aussi, il y a tout ce qui est
Additionally,
coutumière.
the economic return from pastoralism are often irregular and low, further discouraging young people.
Sinon, ils sont en train de disparaître.
As modernization and urbanization progress, traditional pastoral knowledge and practice risk being lost.
Alors, qu'est-ce qu'il faut
So,
donc
to ensure the future of pastoralism,
soutenir donc cette économie et cette culture auprès de nos jeunes
and to
communautés.
support the economy and the culture, it is essential to implement economic and cultural support programs tailored to young pastoralists
Des jeunes pastoralistes par des mécanismes d'aide financière et des formations pour les faciliter
and
l'installation.
trainings for young pastoralists.
C'est l'école. Et nous avons des cas, par exemple, au Maroc, où l'école va
So
suivre les
education, the school, giving us access
il va dans toute la
to the
semaine
youth, to
avec les nomades.
school.
Et ça, en hiver, par exemple, ils sont dans ils transhument dans des zones un peu plus chaudes. En
Since
été,
they're
ils vont dans
nomad and they move
l'école, ils suivent aussi
from winter to summer to different areas, it is important that schools can
le changement climatique.
move together with the community.
Avec le changement climatique, donc qui ont un impact négatif sur ce pastoral. Donc il faut organiser, il faut soutenir ces pastoralistes dans ce monde.
So financial aids mechanism and specialized training program can also help young pastoralists establish themselves in the profession. Education play a vital role in preserving this heritage, ensuring that pastoral knowledge and techniques continue to be passed down.
Que ce soit pastoral ou qui est lié au pastoraliste.
Additionally, given the increasing impact of climate change on pastoral resources, it is crucial to support pastoralists in adapting their practice to this new environmental challenge. One key strategy is also to promote local breeds and traditional pastoral products such as milk, meat, and wool by establishing short supply chain and quality label. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Faguri. Thank you.
Yes.
So let me next turn to Ahmad. Ahmad, do we have you connected? And are you able to unmute yourself? Hello, Ahmad.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ahmad from Iran.
Thank you. Thank you for connecting and being with us today. So I wanted to ask you, because your organization also amplifies the voice of pastoralist communities at various levels, and focuses on recognizing the pastoralist territories of life, the collective rights, mobility, particularly in Iran. And I wanted to similarly get your perspective, maybe on the strategies that you have taken to overcome some of these challenges that we've heard about today.
Excuse me, I will talk about rangeland and pastoralism in Iran, challenges and solution, with a focus on indigenous people solution. It's okay?
Yes. Thank you.
We know that pastoralism is the backbone and invisible assets of the whole dry land. Iran mobile pastoralism, population and rangeland. The population is 1.1 million, about 1.3% of the country population, and the rangelands are 30 million hectare, about 35% of the country rangelands, and they play an important role in the country protein production and the handicrafts.
Ahmad,
challenges.
Sorry to interrupt. Just looking at the time, I was wondering maybe if you could share with us just some key thoughts, maybe more focused on solutions, because sadly we don't have a lot of time left. Thank you.
Okay. Challenges are poor and inappropriate policies and program and various levels, which led to fragmentation of pastoralism territory and also undermining mobility and survival of pastoralists. In which situation, some mobile pastoralism were forced to settle, change job, and migration, and some found solution for resilience that I try to review some of these solution. One, conservation and restoration of the rangeland through managed and rotational grazing, prohibiting grazing in the short term 20 to 60 days, increasing use of hand feeding, and also range irrigation at a small scale, shared rangeland to those who lost their territories, renting rangeland from others, especially villagers without livestock, about 30–40%, increased seasonal migration by car about 70–80%, increase in mobile water supply about 40–50%, increase in well-being through creation of resistant shelters in winter and summer settlements, use of solar panels, use of gas cylinders, and increased car use. In conclusion, overall, both the cost of mobile pastoralism and pressure on rangelands have increased, but they are trying to help each other's sustainability. And Senesta has tried to be with both of them towards this sustainability. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ahmed. Well, we're at the top of the hour, and I would just like to hand over to Khalid for some closing remarks. So Khalid, please, I pass on to you. And you need to unmute yourself. Khalid?
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Tams. Ran very quickly. It was interesting. I would like to thank everybody for your attendance, for your contribution, for your solidarity, and of course for the technical team for all the effort that they had. We have heard a lot about the issues that face the pastoralists around the world from different regions, and and some of the solutions that was offered by the contributors. It's important not always talk about the negative or the obstacles or the issues that faces us. Talking about how we can cooperate among ourselves as pastoralists and our alliance and other stakeholders to make sure that IYRP represent a transformational way in the change and the impact we would like to have for the pastoralists. We know that the IYRP 2026 is coming soon, and of course this is a part of our preparation and find a way how to work together, again, as pastoralists, alliance, and other stakeholders. But there is a lot of work ahead of us to make sure that we can make better use of this opportunity for the change we would like to have. We know that the FAO is delegated to work on the IYRP 2026. And of course, they have already organized a secretariat for that. And I think they are now in the process of organizing or setting up the committee, the steering committee of the IYRP. And this committee will be from 7 state countries and 7 non-governmental or non-state representatives, and they are from different sectors that related to pastoralism. I think this moment is a profound opportunity to amplify a vital message. Pastoral population face immense exposure to challenges such as climate change and many other issues, including socio-economic pressure and globalization, and others that was mentioned by our colleagues, Yet, despite following mobile lifestyle in marginal and variable natural environments, pastoralists remain indispensable stewards of ecosystem biodiversity and the sustainable development of their regions. So that I have like few key possible proposal for actions for us to consider, and I urge our alliance and other stakeholders, attendees here, to help us in this regard and to advocate for a better involvement of the pastoralist and for real actions that can help us. So one of them is the nation-state steering committees. We propose that nation-state, with the support of the FAO, establish smaller steering committees involving key pastoralist right holders and stakeholders. This should include the launch of a trust fund to implement agreed upon actions. Also, consensus-based actions. These actions must prioritize the concerns and priorities of the pastoralist movement, strengthening management capacities and coordination at all levels. Also, secondary trust fund. We call for the creation of a secondary trust fund within the UN with an implementing body composed of the FAO, UNEP, national donor governments, and representation of the pastoralist movement. Inclusive governance. Let us renew our collective promise to leave no one behind by strengthening, recognizing, and involving pastoralist governance institutions. Their active participation in decision-making and policy-making processes is essential to shaping their future. We are committed to actively promoting the IYRP through our network and friend networks and alliance, using all available communication platforms to raise awareness and advocate for pastoralist voices and rights. This initiative represents a unique opportunity to elevate the global and national profiles of pastoral issues, deepen understanding of the challenges and opportunities faced by rangeland and pastoralist communities, and focus increased attention and resources not only on rangeland, but most importantly on the communities that responsibly manage and protect these vital ecosystems. I remind you that the first time when they have proposing the year, they were talking about the rangeland. It took us much of effort to convince them that it is not the rangeland, but also the pastoralists themselves are also important. So at this moment, I know there's much of time, but I would like to thank you all for your attendance, for your contribution, for showing us the support and the solidarity from Alliance, for the contribution, the presentation that showed us different views or different realities from different regions of the world represented here at the moment. Unfortunately, we have other regions that my colleague mentioned. We are like WAMIP, we have representation in all the regions of the world. We have extra or more regions than all the United Nations organization have. But unfortunately, we don't have many of them. So I thank you for all your contribution, and of course I thank the youth and for having a different even perspective, which was really clear through the presentation, the short presentation by Reem, and this makes me think that we should give more focus, more opportunities for youth. Reem just mentioned that, and it is really they soon will give us will leave for us the land to take care of. It's clear that this will happen, but soon, I don't know. However, so they are the future, and we should make sure that they are armed well and very qualified for the battle they have ahead. With this, I end. Thank you. Thank you again, Alia, Dia, and my brother Fernando, for all your great efforts and making sure that this successful webinar happen. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you so much, Khalid. And on that, I would like to close and wish everyone a good rest of their day. I do want to mention that we will be posting a recording of this webinar on our website, which is currently being updated, but you should expect it in a few days. And we also have additional videos sent from other pastoralists Indigenous pastoralists that unfortunately we didn't have time to show today. So we will also be sharing those with you afterwards. But thank you all so much for participating. It was great to engage with you on this important topic. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Alberbius. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.